Hassan Rouhani has been speaking to a crowd in Tehran to mark the 35th anniversary of Iran's Islamic revolution, a revolution that took place, of course, in the wake of the departure of the Shah of Iran, the return from exile of the Ayatollah Khomeini, and the proclamation 35 years ago today of the world's first Islamic state. We're going to take a look on the occasion of that 35th anniversary back at that 1979 revolution. I'm joined here in the newsroom by Ramin Param, who's an Iranian author and intellectual, author of The Secret History of the Iranian Revolution. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. Now, 35 years ago, you were there at the time. The extraordinary enthusiasm, one imagines, in the days just after the Shah had left, but before the Islamic Revolution was proclaimed.
Yes, basically, I was there, starting during the year of the revolution, and 3-4 years after the revolution, the victory of Khomeini and the Shia clergy, and during the terror period, what we call the terror period, that is the massive executions that followed immediately after the taking of power by Khomeini.
But there was a period, it was initially a popular uprising against the Shah that might have gone another way before the Islamists took power.
Absolutely. There were good reasons for the uprising. I mean, you had economic growth, you had the growth of the cities and the middle class had access to education opportunities, economic opportunities. But what lacked seriously back then was social reforms. In terms of in their political, under the political angle. That is, you had a middle class which had grown up economically and demographically with no say in political matters, and that social class demanded political participation.
In fact, there were those at the time of the Arab Spring who spoke of that initial popular uprising as perhaps one of the first uprisings, of course, outside the Arab world, but as a sort of model of what then followed in the Arab world afterwards. The Islamists, though, came in. The Ayatollah Khomeini returned from exile in Paris, and it was then a different turn that the Iranian Revolution
Absolutely.
took.
You could very reasonably say that back then the only politically organized and socially organized force, political force in Iran, was the Shia clergy. That Shia clergy, led by Ayatollah Khomeini and what we say the religious intellectuals who were around him, who basically did all the work in Neuf-le-Château in Paris during those years. These religious forces were the only organized forces in the country, and that's one reason why many people think that the Shah was the second leader, if not the leader of the revolution, because it was because of the dictatorship of the Shah. It was because of the authoritarian nature of his monarchy that no other political force has had anything to say. Therefore, leaving the religious force as the only organized force, and they took over.
What about those first few years to which you alluded, those first few days after Khomeini had taken power, those dashed hopes, perhaps of those who had wanted a different sort of revolution for Iran? What happened in those early years?
What happened, basically, I mean, there are so many things that happened, but basically, toward the end, the Shah started a series of reform, incarnated mainly by the person of his last prime minister, Shapur Bakhtiar, who was assassinated 10 years after that in Paris, 10-12 years after that in Paris. Bakhtiar was a man of reform. Bakhtiar had an agenda of reform, and that was a historic moment which was lost at a very, very high cost. So we lost the opportunity to make meaningful reforms in Iran, even a constitutional reform that would have changed Iran from a monarchy to a republican system. Bakhtiar was ready for that. But having lost that opportunity, we engaged into what is known as the Islamic Revolution, which has been going on for 35 years and whose balance sheet is just simply a calamity, a disaster, and the word is not strong enough.
I came across one figure today, which is an estimate, because it's difficult to have appropriate figures, that 50% of Iranians live today below the poverty line. Do you see in Hassan Rouhani, within that same system which remains intact with Ali Khamenei above, do you believe, though, that Hassan Rouhani can, without changing the system overall, bring the sort sort of reforms to which you...
No, Hassan Rouhani has never pretended even to be a reformist. Hassan Rouhani came to power with only one campaign agenda, political agenda, that is ending the sanctions. And there is another fundamental reason for that. Back in the time of the Shah, prior to the revolution, the Shah's autocracy was unconstitutional. We had a fairly good constitution. Today, we have gone with the revolution from an authoritarian system to a totalitarian system, and the difference, the other difference is that the totalitarian system is perfectly constitutional. It is the constitution of the Islamic Republic, which is a totalitarian constitution. So the only way to reform the country today is change the constitution.
Ramin Param, thank you so much for having been with us today to discuss those issues on this, the 35th anniversary then of that Islamic revolution in Iran. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back in just a moment to have a look at the government-level meeting between China and Taiwan, the first since 1949. Of course, the two countries have now agreed to open representative offices, a meeting that was held in Nanjing, the former capital of the nationalists, before they fled to Taiwan under the leadership of Chiang Kai-shek. We'll be having a look in just a moment at that symbolic meeting.